From Belgium, Etienne de Wilde. From Italy, Valerio Tibaldi. From Ireland, Martin Early. And from Scotland, Robert Miller, all stage winners in this year's Tour de France. Sean Kelly, he won the Green Points jersey for a record 4th time in Paris last week. He's here, and so is Italy's Maurizio Fondris, the current world champion, and Edwig van Hooijdonk, current leader of the Perrier World Cup.
Of history for British cycling as the first World Cup event ever to be held here gets underway in the city of Newcastle. 129 of the world's finest cyclists making up 17 top teams here, heading out now for what will be almost 7 hours in the saddle, and there are very few top riders in the world not here today.
Orange jersey, a series leader at the moment. Ireland's Sean Kelly just a couple of points behind. Laurent Fignon, runner-up in the Tour de France, in 3rd. And then the Belgians, Eric van Lancker and Herman Frison. But keep an eye on Stevie Bauer, Phil Anderson and the big Norwegian Lauritsen. They're all here today and hungry for World Cup points. And just taking a check on what's at stake, the winner gets 14 points. So you can see how important today's race is. Paul Schoen, it's a very interesting course, a lot of variety, but where are the really important stages from your point of view?
Well, really the most important stage is going to be the small finishing circuits when we're into the town. But a lot of the riders are a little bit worried about their bigger circuits because a small group could break away and then it'd be difficult to control them when they come into the finishing circuit.
Would you pinpoint any particular riders who might look at this course and say, I really fancy my chances today?
Well, I think obviously Sean Kelly and Robert Miller would like to do well today because it's almost home crowds for them. But I think there's also the Italian riders. They haven't ridden the Tour de France. They might not be quite as tired as some of the riders who've come from the Tour.
We've seen that tour over the last 3 weeks here on Channel 4. Surely the riders haven't had enough time to get that out of their legs yet.
It's amazing the recuperation these riders have got, because when you see them at the finish of mountain stages, sometimes you think, well, how can they get up and do it again tomorrow? But here they are, they're here in Newcastle, and that's what they're doing.
But we could be in for something pretty special here in Newcastle city centre.
I think so. It's going to be a fantastic finale.
Good, let's hope so. Paul, let's get straight into the action.
And so down below us, an attack has just this minute gone clear of the main field, and this is beginning now on the 3rd circuit of the 21-mile laps. This is Adrie van der Poel here, now bringing the riders into Gateshead, across the bridge, and behind him Johan Capio of the TVM team, and then the whole field realising that this, I think, Paul, the first serious attack of the Wincanton Classic.
And they've attacked early on here because of this rain. They want to try and get clear because they know if a small group can go away on this larger circuit, when we get to the small circuit later on, it'll be very difficult to organise a chase. Interesting to note at the back here, looks like Jelle Nydam, who's having a little bit of a problem.
So the field, they're picking their way across the roads, have had this slight drizzle for the last 15 minutes or so. And Adrie van der Poel here, who retired in the Tour de France with bronchitis, now trying to make some amends with perhaps victory today. Very, very class performer and a classic winner. And this is Adrie van der Poel, who's working very hard at the front now to try and make some sort of a decision here. Being chased by one of the Chateau Dax riders. Of course, they're defending today for Bugno and Adriano Baffi, the big sprinter who could ride well here today. Herman Frison from the Histor team, and it looks as though the main field has caught up here completely because Van der Poel has dropped slightly back down the field. Henri Manders dropping through on the inside, looking round at the riders who've come up towards the front of the group. This looks like Van Hooijdonk here, number 1. He's at the back of the field, in fact, Paul, and it looks as though he's having to race back into the bunch. Quite clearly had a problem early on.
He could well have done. It's very dangerous, and he's actually quite a way back at the moment. It looks as if he's got 2 of his teammates waiting for them there. It may just be a wheel change or something. Looks like Gerrit Solleveld was dropping back for him, and they'll try and pace him back into the race.
Well, let's give us the first chance to look at the World Cup leader here. This is the jersey, whereas you have the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, we have this rather strange coloured jersey here as the leader of the Perrier World Cup Series. And clearly Van Hooijdonk has had a problem. He's way down in the caravan of cars, and now we're seeing an example of the teamwork being paced back. Gerrit Solleveld is the rider just in front of him, but he's got 2 teammates here, and also one of the ADR squad taking advantage of the pacing back. This is Bo-André Nomveld from the ADR team.
Well, Van Hooijdonk still, with the help of his teammates, trying to come back there, but he shouldn't have too much difficulty because, as you can see, the field is spread across the road there. They're taking it quite easy until we get out into the open plains and the crosswinds, where they'll start to race a little bit harder again.
Well, let's have a look. This is where the action is. There's Van Hooijdonk, number 1, coming back up to the field. Team who's held in yellow Nydam, number 5. On the left of our picture there, twice a stage winner in this year's Tour de France. Desperately unlucky. He never made it 3 in a row when he finished at Ile d'Abo on the Saturday before the Tour ended just over a week ago. He got 2 though, and he was delighted with that. Van Hooijdonk is making hard work of this. We're on the climb up to Sunnyside at the moment, outside of Gateshead now, going out onto the more picturesque side of the course. And so we'll leave these 3 at the back, rejoin the head of the field here. I think it's safe to say that they will get back at the far tail of the field. Now we've got a problem at the back here, Paul. A Histor rider has punctured and a Toshiba rider.
I think that was actually a crash field because one of the Toshiba lads, his chain has just come off there. The problem is this road is very narrow, and you could see the riders were all the way across the field. There's the team mechanic there, jumping out of the car to try and help him, getting his chain back on, giving him a little push to get him back into the convoy of cars, and he'll be able to get back into the field.
There's Henri Manders in the white sleeves, and there's Kelly making an appearance right at the front, just to remind everybody he's well in this race today. I just have that feeling about Sean today, Paul.
Well, I think he was very upset in the Tour de France this year because he rode so incredibly. He was always placed in the first 4 or 5 in those finishes. Even in the mountain stages, he was nearly always in the first 10. I think he really would have liked to win a stage. It was so close to that penultimate stage down in the south of France there. And I think really now that Sean is here, he always likes to race well in England because although it's not his home country, he likes to race well in front of the crowd who really feel that they can endear themselves to him.
And here's the world champion in the white jersey, Maurizio Fondriest. Seeing him on British roads does the old heart good, because Fondriest is the rider, of course, who won this title in Belgium last September when there was that very controversial finish between Fondriest, Steve Bauer and Claude Coquillon. And Bauer also in the field today. That was when Bauer and Coquillon were involved in the accident in the last 50 metres or so of the championship. Exactly who would have won, who knows? But I always felt, Paul, that Fondriest would have won that race, you know.
It's very possible. I mean, I've watched the replay so many times, and I really wouldn't have to like to have betted on it. But Fondriest came up so quickly in that last 100 yards, he may well have won anyway. There is Rudy Darnans just following Kelly. Darnans will stay near Sean Kelly all the time in case Kelly has a problem, if he has a puncture or he needs something. Darnans will be there as his henchman to make sure that Kelly has every possible chance.
Well, this is Kelly's day in this sort of weather. Sean is not a man for the sun. He loves it when the going's tough and rough, and when he sees riders covered in dirt and suffering, he seems to take a lot of strength from that.
Another man who always rides well in this kind of weather is Stephen Roche, and unfortunately there, as you can see, Van Hooijdonk at the back of the field. I think he's okay for the moment, just possibly going back maybe to get a raincoat to make sure that his teammates are okay. It's a pity Stephen Roche isn't here today. He had that injury that he sustained in the Tour de France. Stephen would have revelled in conditions like this, and he always used to like to race in England as well.
What a marvellous sporting city Newcastle upon Tyne really is, because they've welcomed a lot of cycle racing at great levels over the years, but none as big as this one. I think if we dare to add up the salary of these 129 riders, we will be in the millions of pounds.
There's Van der Poel still at the front, making sure he takes the best line around these corners as he comes into the bottom of Grey Street there.
And you can see this is the approach the riders will have when they come up to the finishing line. They swing up here into Grey Street. It is a nasty climb, believe me. If you walk up it, you get out of breath. Little break going clear, and again it's Van der Poel who's causing the action. I think Dorgalo has joined them as well, and one of the Lotto riders.
Straight away behind, it's the Panasonic's team that are reacting, and it looks like it's Theo de Roy reacting. Funnily enough, Theo de Roy's parents were in England on holiday a few weeks ago, and it's a pity they couldn't have stayed to see Theo race over here. Van der Poel on the front, forcing the pace, and this climb here will get harder and harder as the day goes on. It'll feel as if somebody's jacking it up with some kind of a hydraulic lift.
This is the Lotto rider coming through, and it looks to me as though it's Patrick Verschuren who's heading the field up towards the end of the lap this time. That's the finish they will see. The 53 minutes on the clock there is the time for the lap. Far and away the best time. And this is Bontempi who comes through there. He is in fact leading this small sprint competition very convincingly indeed. And so that's it. 3 laps gone and the field still all together.
Nothing to it really, is there?
So that's how it's done, and this is the view now from the helicopter of the whole field in the Wincanton Classic. It has just reformed, in fact, a breakaway which contains Sean Kelly and Jelle Nijdam. In fact, 5 or 6 riders went clear. They've been caught again, and the race distance covered now about 102 miles. And it's fair to say now, Paul, that the race is full of action.
Well, as we come to the end of these, the last of the big laps here, the riders obviously trying to force a group away. There is Martinelli. Everybody wants to get away now because this is the time, as we get onto the small little circuit with the repetitive climb of Grey Street, that everyone wants to move clear.
And now look at the splits in the big field as we look down from the helicopter here. The pressure going on at the front of the race and the cracks are forming. This is going to be difficult now for the riders to read it. The Z Peugeot team, which Robert Miller, of course, is part of today, is down there in the lead at the moment. Now, looking back, you can see the damage being done at the front. Still a big field, despite the distance covered, although 1 or 2 riders have come back through the finish line here in Newcastle and have retired from the race. The Histor rider is Wilfred Peters. This is Dagotto Lauritsen having a go now. Dagotto, who had such an unlucky period in the Tour de France because he contracted chickenpox off his 2 children, and it showed itself after about a week of the Tour, and he had to retire. Martinelli looking over his shoulder there in the white, making sure that Sean Kelly is not too far away. His job is to be the policeman here, to try and keep chopping down these little breakaways, hoping that Kelly will read it right when the time comes towards the end. There's still 7 of the 6-mile laps to go. That's when they come through the finish line, but we're going back down now towards the city of Newcastle. And at the end of this lap, the riders will have completed 105 miles. And as I speak, the sun comes through to make a very pleasant finale here in Grey Street. Now, if we come into our view, let's see if in fact the split is forming. It's a very big group at the front, Paul. It's going to be very difficult to monitor this.
Well, they won't want such a big group to move away at the moment, and the teams at the back will be chasing now to bring it all back together. We've got the Lotto team from Belgium on the front here, and Jean-Claude Leclerc, who was a former French champion who rides for the Swiss Helvetia team.
Over the River Tyne, as they make this sharp, swinging right-hand bend. And then they flick left. You can see the crowds down there, the Tour de France proportions, and this is Britain, don't forget. The first time a World Cup race has ever come here. And Alan Piper's in this forward group as well, the rider who knows Grey Street. This is the approach to the finish that they will see in about an hour and a half's time still to go. But Piper working well in this front group as well.
On the front there, Johannes Dreyer from the PDM team, making just a little bit hard, maybe making the teams behind chase. Theo de Roy on his wheel, followed by another of the Z Peugeot riders.
There's the new professional, Johannes Dreyer. Came over to Ireland when he rode for Holland in the Nissan Classic a couple of years ago, and he gave the professionals quite a shock as an amateur. He was in the lead for over 100 miles at one particular stage. That's put his name in all of our memories. Now he's turned professional. As they come through now for the 7 circuits to go, led through by the PDM rider, Johannes Dreyer. He's the man who's got number 13 on his bike today as well, by the way, the one that Rudy Darmans had when he crashed out in Blagnac in the Tour de France, when he looked certain to win the stage. Now it's Dreyer who has that number. And this is the tail of the main field. Theo de Roy from the Panasonics. And Dagotto in the green, also keeping close order at the front.
Ronan Ponsek there from the Z Peugeot team. He'll be trying to push the pace up a little bit. It's surprising to see the PDMs driving this group away at the moment, but I don't think the main field are very far behind because they've reacted quite quickly to a dangerous move like this.
Well, he's the leader of the World Cup competition, the man who won the Tour of Flanders, and that's was a surprise at the time, but anybody who's seen him ride this year since aren't surprised any longer. He came through the Tour de France. It's a question of knowing whether he came through it very, very strong. Look like Phil Anderson shot off up the inside there, the Australian. So Phil Anderson having a little go. Another rider who might like to do well here today. And joining him on the Z Peugeot side, Bruno Cornier, and we saw plenty of him in the Tour de France this year, the long lone breakaways of Cornier. So he tried daily for the victory which eluded him on the stage. So Cornier on the front. Anderson joins him. Frank Masson comes back up on the inside. Anderson immediately goes after Masson. Now it's these constant lifting of the speed now that is going to break up this pack.
Well, this is what the teams will be doing now. They'll be trying to take the speed up all the time to break the race up, to move a little group away like this. There's another rider just tagging on the back there. There's Anderson going through, followed by Cornier.
There's Cornier, puffing and blowing a lot at the moment. So now he's joined by Johan Museu from the ADR team. He certainly had a hard Tour de France looking after Greg LeMond this year.
A good group here, Phil, because one of the riders there also was Adrie van der Poel, who we saw so much of in the early part of the race today. There are about 8 riders going, well, there are 7 riders, I think, and 1 rider just coming across there to make an 8-man group, and it looks at the moment as if they're building up quite a nice little lead.
So the constant attacking, which has been evident over the last 10 miles, has finally cracked this big field, who are now going to have to reorganize themselves. And you can see now the splits. We're looking up the road here to the group. The main field are chasing very, very hard indeed, because they realise that they may now be looking at the first split, which could well decide the Wincanton World Cup race today. So there's the main field, and if we can look a little bit up the road, let's see down by the left of our picture there, if we can pick up the leads. There's still a big gap there. There's still a few seconds between these, because look at this. A long, empty stretch of road. So those 7 leaders, Paul, we think the 7, there might be 8, have got the gap at the moment. This is Masson here, who's realising just what he has got. Ron Kiefel is on the front. That is Musier from the ADR team. And he's anxious to get on with the racing too at the moment.
Well, Phil, as we look at this group here as they attack Grey Street, Van der Poel is on the front there, Phil Anderson just having done his turn. The PDM team are very noticeable by their absence from here. And I wouldn't be surprised if we go back down the street to see them actually organising the chase, try and pull this back, because this is a very, very dangerous move at the moment with Van der Poel, with Dirk de Mol, who's not had a brilliant season since he won that Paris-Roubaix, but also Bruno Cornier, who's in there on the front at the moment. Frans Masson, one of the Super Convex boys, who could be a surprise rider today.
Well, with 6 laps to go now, 36 miles left to the finish. There's the time, the clock counting, and the time for the lap is 12 minutes, 33 seconds. A little bit more. But it certainly looks as though this breakaway is trying to go clear. I make it 9 men, so somebody else has crossed the gap. We've got 2 riders in front here, Cornier and Frans Masson, who's taking the group through. And this is an interesting move indeed, because as Paul Sherwin has said, the PDM team, the defending team champions, and of course the man Sean Kelly on that team, have nobody represented in this leading group at all. Masson is the rider who's pushed for the gap. He shouted at the riders to open the gap. Cornier puffed and blew his way up to the leaders, and there he is. I must say that Cornier seems to me, Paul, to be one of the most underrated riders. He's always willing to have a go.
He's always very aggressive, and since he's turned professional, that's been the way he's ridden. He's never thought to tactically sometimes. He's always wanted to have a go. And when it comes to the big races like the Tour de France, like the Classics, he's one of the Frenchmen who gets in there and has a good fight. Looks like they've moved clear a little bit as Museu just bridges the gap. There's Van der Poel coming back again.
Well, the time check now officially 38 seconds at the end of that first small 6-mile circuit. 6 more laps to come, 36 miles remaining. And we've got 9 riders in this front group. Frans Masson not willing to do a majority of the work here as we go past the Civic Centre in Newcastle, heading out once more.
Well, actually, Phil, on the climb there, it looks as if that group has swelled a little bit more. I think there's a small group actually come across to them on the climb, and we're looking up now around about 15 riders in the front.
Yes, it's certainly grown, Paul. There's no question about that. We'll try and get down amongst them from our helicopter shortly, but looking down there, that group, as you can see, is certainly substantially more now than 9 men. These riders coming across on the climb at Grey Street, and there's the man with the most to gain if it works out, because if Kelly can just put a couple of places into Van Hooijdonk in the sprint finish today, then he'll be the leader of the World Cup tonight to take the jersey over to Montreal, where the next event is.
What we'll probably find now, Phil, for the next 2 or 3 laps is one of the teams who have missed out at the back, obviously, is the Ariostia team, as they've organised the chase. You can see the whole of the team there, but there aren't really very many of them here. There are 4 or 5 trying to organise the chase, and in the front you've got 15 riders dedicated to the success of this breakaway. What they'll try and do is try and build up a lead of 2 or 3 minutes if they can, and then we'd start to see the tactical racing happening. Kelly's position is quite strange, because if you look at the position of most of the riders from Cyril Guimard's team, everybody has a tendency to sit a lot further back to get the power out. But Kelly, with this position he's got, he manages to mix the power and suppleness, and he manages to, with the power that he's got, get it out very quickly.
And we caught a glimpse there as Kelly went by the jersey of the world champion, Maurizio Fondries. He desperately needs a good result. It's so difficult in the year you are the world champion to win races, especially if you keep on wearing the colours, the rainbow jersey, which only the world champion currently can wear. And Fondries has been injured. He's coming back gently. He didn't ride the Tour de France, but he's put himself into this breakaway, and I think it was fair to assess that when he arrived here at all to sign on this morning, everybody knew then he wasn't going to make the long journey to Britain without having a real go. He's found his way then into the breakaway of some 17 riders. They'll shortly be coming back round towards Grey Street again for the completion of their second small circuit. 5 more to go, and the breakaway looking extremely dangerous. 17 or 18 riders in this lead group, and it is an absolutely talented group indeed. Etienne de Wilde, who won 15 races very early on, followed by Phil Anderson. And there's de Wilde on the inside, dropping back. He seems to measure his season in bursts, Paul. He races well early on, then he has a little break, and he comes back again in the middle.
Well, de Wilde has to do that because he's actually one of the top men on the 6-day circuit in the winter that Tony Doyle rides in. Etienne de Wilde rides the track through the winter, starts off the beginning of the season in the Classics, has a little bit of a rest, comes back for the Tour de France, has another little bit of a rest towards the end of September, then builds up again for the 6 days. But really, de Wilde is quite incredible, because at the end of the day, he ends up racing for most of the 12 months of the year.
Which always amazes me. I never know how they can not just maintain their fitness for so long, but also how they can maintain the enthusiasm to keep at the same regime every day. There's the world champion going through, number 45. It's you can count the times we've seen the championship jersey being worn on British roads on one hand, and this is one of those great occasions. And going alongside the Tyne here, heading up towards Grey Street now, Maurizio Fondries, champion of the world for just another couple of weeks, because he'll have to defend that title in Chambéry in France the last weekend in August. But it looks like his form might be coming back at exactly the right time. We're heading up towards what will be the finish here, but there's still 5 more circuits to go. Bruno Cornier in the blue, Lageretta, the small thin man, in the white, the ace little Spanish mountain climber. You can see why he can climb. Look at him on this hill now. Loves every minute of it. Fondries there too in the white jersey. The rider sitting there at the back of the group is Frank van den Abel, number 91. And somebody from the Ariostia team, Paul, has sprinted across that gap at a tremendous speed. And so the riders coming up, 4 hours and 55 minutes they've been in the saddle. 12 minutes 40 seconds, same as last lap was that time. The field are closing in rapidly from behind. It could well all come together again, so join us after the break. So we're coming through again. This time it'll be 4 laps to go to the finish, and this time we're going to see the only Scotsman in the race. Robert Miller heading the charge. There he is in second place in the middle of the group. Sammy Morel setting the pace, and the crowd giving them a round of applause as they come through. Morel's, Miller, early. Well, this is the big try by Roberts now. He's committing himself, but there's somebody else coming across the gap. If we can get one or two across and not the field, there's a chance.
Well, yes, that's Guy Newland still trying to come across, but if you look a bit further down, here's the rest of the field. It looks like it's only going to be about 15 seconds as they come over the top, and Robert Miller takes them through over the line. We've only got 7 seconds lead as the rest of the field come through, led by Guy Newlands. There's the field. Miller's only got about 8 seconds clear.
I don't think it can be enough, but you never know what happens once they're over the hill. And A's up again. Noel Shostek was the rider just behind Guy Newlands from the ADR team. Well, as we look down to the streets and the ring road and the main roads surrounding the city of Newcastle today, the route the riders are on closed down magnificently by the police here to bring this first ever World Cup to Great Britain. And right now we have a British rider on the front. Look at him, Robert Miller. Sprouting wings, as they say. Sammy Morels and the two riders are on the back. Early's just gone behind them to have a look who they are. One's from the Helvetia team. And we're back through the feeding station, but this time Miller not interested. Neither is anybody else, but it's so close, the bunch behind. I can't really see this working out, although we'd all love it to.
Well, Robert Miller's group was caught and swallowed up. Let's rejoin the race in the next lap. It's still wide open, but attacks are happening up front.
And we've got new leaders now, and it looks like it's Cornier going away again. Bruno Cornier here. And up with him there, I think possibly it's Patrick Tolhoek who's joined him. And the Chateau d'Ax rider who's come up is Bunyo, stage winner in the Tour de France last year. And there he is now. He's trying his luck. First time I've seen Bunyo in the front of the action. Tolhoek in second place. Giovanni Bunyo as he drifts out, but it looks to me as though he's realised too that this isn't the combination that's going to break up this field. Well, they're a tenacious lot today.
Well, nobody wants to let the break go away, and as everyone sits up there, Patrick Tolhoek decides he'll have another go, and he attacks down the wrong side of the road, and straight away the reaction is right behind him.
Well, this is a very difficult part of the course. It's downhill. There's one or two nasty dog legs in it, and it's where the riders can possibly break the attention of the field, at least for a few seconds while they get round the corner. And once the elastic breaks, sooner or later they'll be thinking we might well get clear. This is the view from the back of the field. It's a long, long way down to the front. Just look at this now as the riders string out 50 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour down here. The riders just consolidate the positions they have. Once they run off the descent, they'll then try and catch up with the front end. I think Patrick Tolhoek has been picked up by the riders here on the descent. And I think he's back there in third place at the moment. And again, as we go down towards the banks of the River Tyne, heading towards Grey Street, the riders will have 2 full circuits to do when they come through the finish line next time, and that's just 12 miles to go. And it would be very, very surprising if this race comes home as a big group, wouldn't it?
Well, it will be, and moving into the front of the race now in the white crasher, if you can see him in the green and red jersey, is Sean Yates. As we move into the crucial part of the race, Sean will be trying to get to the front, try and force a group away as well.
Way down below us. So we look for them, the riders in the World Cup, winding their way down through the bottom there. They'll just come into our view very shortly. Here they are. As they swing up towards Grey Street. 2 more climbs before the finish after this one. The PDM team, I noticed, coming back into the front here in the white jerseys. Sean Kelly never more than 6 or 7 away from the lead of the race now. Maurizio Fondries is also here, 4th or 5th down in the line. This is, I think, is Henri Manders who's having a little go. There's Van Hooijdonk up to 3rd place. getting more confidence as this race unfolds because he's still right in the thick of the action. Eric Van Lancker is here too. Van Lancker was the winner of the Amstel Gold Race, the last event we had in the World Cup in May. And Jean-Claude Leclerc also in this front group as the race again starts to split up on the climb. They're going round in almost exactly the same lap times, 12:34 this time, just 4 seconds slower. And the field sprinting a little bit, but it's Van Hooijdonk who's got into that leading group. And there's a TVM rider, Jacques Hanegraaff, also I noticed go through. So it's interesting, Paul, but Van Hooijdonk might have found the time to do it.
Well, he's really come back a lot after the misadventures he had in the first part of the race when he had to change a bike. He was waited for he had 4 teammates waiting for him, paced him back into the field. And now, as each time we go up Grey Street, it goes to show you can see the pain on the rider's face. It's getting harder and harder. We've got Jean-Claude Leclerc on the front here, being chased by third place is Van Hooijdonk. Sean Kelly not very far away in the front of the group as the main field come back into contention again.
Let's have a look. There's Van Hooijdonk, the rider on the left of our screen. At least if he's not going to break away, he's going to make 1 or 2 legs ache now as they try to scramble up. And the rider bringing the group across, the white jersey of world champion Fondriest. Another rider whose confidence must be building now because he has a very good sprint finish. And in fact, when he won the world title in Rons in Belgium, it was on almost exactly the same type of hill that we're riding up today in Grey Street.
Going away now, Phil, that's Yvon Maggio, brother of Mark, who Yvon we actually saw crash on one of the latter stages of the Tour de France, and I think shadowing him was Sean Kelly himself. They're just moving 50 metres or so clear of the field.
So former French champion Marc Madio having a little dig here at the front now, taking along with him Sean Kelly, and Kelly saying, no, I'm not helping you. Now that was interesting.
Well, it's just a small group at the moment. They're not very far clear, and Kelly obviously not wanting to waste too much energy. Kelly has been working so hard at the moment. He doesn't want to do too much work in a move that might not go clear. Van Hooijdonk obviously feeling a lot better now because as soon as it comes back together, he tries to attack down the left-hand side of the road.
Well, Van Hooijdonk has taken this race back to Sean Kelly today. The leader of the World Cup Series hasn't been a man to sit in and rest on his laurels in this big field. He has been trying to break it up continually. 1 minute we see Sean Kelly having a go, and as soon as Kelly is caught, it's Van Hooijdonk who launches the attack. And this is beginning to enter into a very, very interesting climax indeed, because remember, only 2 points separate these two men from the standings in the World Cup. And now we've got Van Hooijdonk on the right leading the string here, while the Chateau Dax team now launch an attack on the left. So the Chateau Dax go. It looks to me as though it could be Tony Rominger having a little dig here, but in fact it's Gianni Bugno, little small sprinter from the Chateau Dax team. Doesn't seem to be going away with quite the conviction he needs to, Paul.
No, I think he would prefer to wait for a group of riders to come up to him.
Now he's looking over to see where they are. The answer is they're not so far behind. Now here come the attacks again, being launched all the time by the PDM team. And once they've come for Bugno, they've taken him. There's a little problem at the back end of the race here.
What happened there, Phil, was one of the riders got a little bit of paper stuck into the jockey wheels of his free wheel, and you can see the mechanic leaning over the back wheel, trying to get everything out. This is a problem with racing in town. Sometimes a little bit of litter on the road, and it soon gets flicked up and gets caught in the rear gear.
As we go back up to Bugno, who's having another little dig, he's trying desperately to sneak off the front of this. I find it a little bit surprising, Paul, because he is a man who can handle himself in a sprint finish.
Well, the thing is, it's not necessarily a pure sprinter's finish. It's a very difficult finish. It's almost a climber's finish. What he would like to do is provoke a breakaway, because it's always easier to win from a small group than take the risk of sprinting in a big bunch, because you never know what can happen in the last 2 or 3 miles when you've got 40 or 50 riders trying to fight at the front. Maybe you can get boxed in, maybe you can get knocked off. As I say, what all the riders would prefer is to get away in a small group.
Bugno hangs there, dangles like the proverbial carrot as the field try desperately. Looks like Steve Bauer making the pace on the front of the group. Very distinctive low style as he gets out of the saddle and throws the bike from one side to the other. Canadian stage winning the Tour a year ago and wore the yellow jersey on 2 occasions. And they sweep up Giovanni Bugnol. Keeping this pace consistently above 26, 27 miles an hour along the top end of the course. A bit too quick for the riders to go away. They're getting out front, but they're not being able to keep the pace high. This is Steve Bauer. Also a man using a lot of energy here, Paul, and it's not plainly evident why, because he's not going anywhere.
Well, he's like all the rest of the riders in this race, still trying to force a breakaway, not being able to find the gap, but just insisting, pushing it down a little bit there.
And there's Edwig van Hooijdonk, trying to fill some of the gaps which are opening consistently. It's Bauer who's doing the pace-making at the front. And van Hooijdonk appears to be in about as much trouble as anybody else in this race at the moment, because they're all having to bridge gaps. And even when you're on top form, it hurts very much so when you have to close gaps left open by weaker riders.
Well, down that straight there where we had a lot of wind from the side, from the right-hand side, it looks as if the power that Steve Bauer has been putting in at the front has actually formed a little bit of a breakaway, and we've got something like 15-20 riders moving clear again. There on the front is Frans Maassen, followed by Steve Bauer.
So Bauer's effort may not have been in vain here. He's taken a lot of boys with him, but he's opened the gap. Somebody left the door open in the middle of the pack, and we've got a little bit of a group going clear. It'll be interesting to see whether Kelly's read this. It was obvious that Van Hooijdonk did. Patrick Tolhoek this is. The surprise of the Tour de France in many ways, and he's quite clearly come out of it full of form.
Well, Tolhoek there just got the word from Van Hooijdonk. They noticed that the break had moved away a little bit, and Tolhoek has been told by Van Hooijdonk to put his head down, sacrifice himself, try and force this group away a little bit further, because when they come to the finish line next time, there's only one lap to go, and they really would like to split the race. Look at the face on Tolhoek here as he's forcing himself to push the speed higher and higher to try and drag them away.
No thoughts of victory here for Patrick. He's out just to make the gap and open it for his man Van Hooijdonk, who hurt himself to cross up to these leaders. Now he's there. Tolhoek will just destroy himself to try and drag this group clear, knowing that Van Hooijdonk can look after himself if it comes through to the finish.
The power of Tolhoek there is actually forcing the riders at the back to get split up as well. We've got in this group there Frans Maassen, Steve Bauer, there's Johan Museau, who's on the back of this group. They're about 14, 15. It'd be nice to get in there and see if Sean Kelly's missed this move, because I'd really like to know why Tolhoek is having to force the pace so high. There in the back, you can see the peloton starting to come back again.
So has Sean Kelly read the move? I don't see a white PDM jersey in this breakaway, and that would certainly is Paul. Yes, he's here. He's right there. In fact, he's right up here at the front now. Kelly has come through. He's read it well, and for about the third time today, he's trying to work a way clear with a leading group coming towards the climax of this Wincanton Classic. There's Sean Kelly then. He's riding so intelligently today that one feels that he's going to produce the finish we've all hoped for to see from him on the Tour de France, when he didn't win a stage, and in fact has never won a stage in the Tour de France since 1982. But I think he's finished second on no fewer than 15 occasions.
Sprint or launch a lone attack?
Well, depending on who was in the break, first of all. But more than likely I would wait for the sprint, because the finish is very difficult, uphill finish, and it's really a strongman's finish. It's not really a sprinter, so if you're with a really good sprinter, it doesn't say that he's going to win the race on a finish like this.
Now it is the last lap. Kelly's right in there. Can he produce a popular win to celebrate the arrival of the World Cup?
As the riders continue to fight for what could still be Sean Kelly's day. He's 2 points behind in the overall series. Kelly hoping to bridge that gap by finishing at least one place ahead today, because the winner today gets 14 points. Second place gets 11, and that would do Kelly today. A win ahead of Van Hooijdonk would give him the lead. There's three riders trying to just go clear. I feel that Bugnol is still one of them, and yes, he is. There he is. But Sean Kelly certainly isn't now. TVM, the Panasonic rider, is up here, and so too one of the Histor men. But the gap closing down. It looks like the world champion himself is coming across the gap. Fondriest. Here's the line of riders behind the main field. Number 2 is Tom Cordis, the former junior world champion, sitting near the back of the field. beginning to find his feet now in the professional circus. Oh, and there was almost a little bit of a touch of wheels there, Paul. That's the big danger now.
Well, that was Johannes Dreyer there. He was looking over his shoulder just to see what was happening behind, and the rider in front moved. Not a deliberate mistake, the kind of thing that can cause a severe accident.
Chateau d'Ax. Gianni Bugno stays near the front of the race. But now we've got that little bit of a lull because the riders tense and nervous.
Everybody thinking now it's going to be a bunch sprint, but that's the most dangerous time because the riders drop the guard a little bit, and a rider can just move clear and end up stealing the victory from under the nose of the riders waiting for the sprint.
And Switzerland's Tony Rominger taking up the lead now for the Chateau d'Ax boys. Now the field comes back together again. Still nobody willing to get out and have a go. As I speak, somebody's launched a tremendous attack down the inside. The PDM team are quickly into the defence because they must be feeling now that she's running very nicely the way of Sean Kelly. But of course, let's not forget the Super Complex team will also be thinking.
There was a crash there, Phil.
There's
just
a
in the middle of the road.
Yep. That looks like a TVM rider has gone down in the centre, but you see there was one rider fallen and all the field have gone round him. And in fact, the rider who's fallen here is Frank van den Abel, number 91. He's the rider who went down, but the marvellous reaction to the main field. And it's hard to imagine that one man can fall in the middle of that pack of 100 men and nobody else go with him.
What happened there was there's a group of 5 riders going away. Van der Abel came across to the group. As the group was moving clear, they eased a little bit. He looked behind to see where the rest of the field was, and he rode into the wheel in front and fell off without bringing anybody else down. But as you said, incredible the way everybody just rides around and misses him.
And it looks as though he's A-OK and is racing back into the field as well. Still, the pressure comes on. It looks like Henri Manders here having a dig. As Ron Kiefel has a go from the 7-11. A sort of man who, given his head, he could go clear if anybody's willing to give anybody a lead today as they start to try. And everybody will feel now at this stage of the race the man who keeps trying might well pull off the biggest win of his career because the race is absolutely wide open. Kiefel has started the attack then, the former champion of the United States until he lost his title in Philadelphia just 2 weeks before the start of the Tour de France. Down in the trees, being chased by 3 riders. Here's Kiefel. Ron Kiefel's wife, Darcy, a photographer on the international circuit. They live 2 totally separate lives during the summer because Darcy Kiefel photographs and she rarely ever speaks to Ron during the time he rides the Tour de France. Joined here by Wilfred Peters. Nice little breakaway perhaps. Kiefel's found his second win now, willing to work with Peters.
Just needs a little bit of a rest from the wind because he was the one who started this move. Gets a little bit of a breather. Wilfred Peters is on his wheel, and there is the whole field coming back together again. Led again by the Helvetia La Suisse team.
They claw the way back in and the race keeps together. There's Peters gritting his teeth. There's Kiefel not bothering to look over his shoulder. No, they're all sitting right behind him again. As Frans Maassen yet again, this inexhaustible man that has another little go. He just never gives up. I think if he won a race, we'd all cheer because he tries so hard over the last few miles of every race he rides in. One day he's going to pull off a big one.
Well, he might well do it there, Phil, because one of his teammates swung across the road to close the door a little bit, and Maassen going clear now. He's got about 150 metres.
We first met Frans Maassen in the Nissan Classic in Ireland a couple of years ago when he won the Sprint Series. And he was always willing to attack and look for the moves. And if you've got the strength to do it, sooner or later, you're going to get the rewards you richly deserve. And Maassen now having another go. Turned professional only in 1987. 24 years of age. I must say he looks a bit older than that today. That's probably the pain of nearly 7 hours in the saddle. A couple of wins after turning professional in 1987. And he won the sprints competition in the Tour de France last year. But he didn't really feature in them this year. As we look down now to the riders as they swing around the outskirts of Town Moor, heading off towards the finish of the Wincanton Classic. They're about 3.5 miles from the line. Some way of understanding how much Frans Maassen improved in only his second year as a professional last year, because he won 13 races, including the Tour of Belgium. And this year, he's won the Championship of Holland. That's the jersey he wears at the moment. He keeps on pounding away. It would be nice to know just how far away the group are, but they can't be very close. We've got 3 riders. Cornier again at the back of this group. As we move back up towards the leaders. Kelly again at the front of the group. Sean Kelly is riding so well today, and he's looking for the move. When Kelly moves his head all the time and he starts twitching, then he is a man who's feeling good.
He is as well, but there's a bad sign for Sean Kelly there, because there in the white jersey, number 86 is Etienne de Wilde, the former Belgian champion. De Wilde is an incredible finisher. Also in that group there is Bruno Cornier, and one of the Lotto riders is in second place at the moment.
Well, I don't think Sean Kelly will be too upset. In fact, if De Wilde won this race, because the big news for him would be that Edwin van Hooijdonk is not in this group at all. And if Kelly can get a place, then of course he would take the jersey away from Van Hooijdonk. And look at the gap. And I don't think Van Hooijdonk was in those 2 riders who just came up. We'll go and have a look at them now. But in fact, he's not. And one of the Ariostoia boys has come across, but Van Hooijdonk is not here. This is Bruno Cornier setting the pace now. Another man who's been a great aggressor today. And the Lotto rider who's come up, Willem van Einde, also in this group. At the back now, it looks in fact as though Ronan Pensek has come up at the back of this group, Paul.
That is Pensek there at the back of the group. Just in front of him is also Henk Lubeding.
Henk Lubeding, wearing 108, rode his 13th Tour de France this year, and he finished it. You think of all the miles. There's Frans Maassen, the man who's caused the big split today, and rather sadly for him, he might be reshaping the World Cup, not for his own teammate Van Hooijdonk, but indeed for Sean Kelly.
He could very well be, as he doesn't know the damage that's happened behind. He's the one who started the move. It was up to Van Hooijdonk really to make sure that he came across with Kelly, because Kelly was the man that Van Hooijdonk had to watch, and Kelly's in the group behind Frans Maassen here.
Well, he might know a little bit now. He took a glance over his shoulder there to see what's going on. As we look here now, the last man on the line is Ronan Pensek. Number 94 is Wim van Einde. So these boys may have just slipped away. There'll be nothing in it because the big field is chasing them down. And remember, it's a nasty climb up Grey Street. It is the sort of climb where legs can crack up after almost 6 hours now. 5 hours and 57 minutes they've been in the lead. This is the long descent before they swing around to the River Tyne for the final time, and then start the long climb to the line.
Well, Phil, the one other rider that's in the group from Ariostoia who we haven't managed to identify, I think, is Petito, who himself is quite a good finisher. I haven't been able to get in there quite close enough to see. The lead at the moment is something like 15-20 seconds as they come along down this little road, as they'll come alongside the Tyne in a minute, and they'll be at the bottom of the finish of Grey Street. And what a finale that would be if Sean Kelly could surge out. But Frans Maassen is still on his own away as they drop down there to the side of the Tyne. He's not got very far to go, maybe about 2 kilometres.
Will he be a tremendously deserving winner, Frans Maassen? He lies 8th overall in the World Cup Series at the moment with 9 points. And that was by virtue of his second place this year in March in the Milan-San Remo, where he was beaten to the first place by none other than Laurent Fignon, the rider who lost the Tour de France by just 8 seconds last Sunday in Paris. Maassen today a really deserving winner if he can hold off this group, because in this group Sean Kelly wanting more action, checking where Van Hooijdonk is, looking again to see if he can see him coming up. And as far as we know, the bunch may now be going out of the World Cup today, and Sean Kelly might be going into the leader's jersey. Maassen into Grey Street for the final time, still holding on to the lead. It looks as though Frans Maassen is going to win this one today now. He's got the lead he wants, and I for one think that's a great result. We've seen Maassen try so hard throughout the Tour de France with no result. Today he's done it again when it looked as though the whole field was going to win, and now he has the gap that's going to give him the win. He gets 14 points today. That will give him, in fact, a 23 points. He gives him 23 points overall. If Kelly might find that Frans Maassen is going to take the leader's jersey here unless Kelly gets a good result. And by a good result, I think he will need 2nd or 3rd place. Maassen comes up to the line now, then it'll go to statistics whether he's the new leader of the World Cup Series. One thing's for sure, he's got the victory here, and he's got it well indeed. So Jan Roos and the Super Convex team have scored again. and the bunch are right behind them as Masson looks over his shoulder there, doesn't worry at all as Pondrias gets second, Kelly gets third, and fourth place there will have gone, I think, to Etienne de Wilde. Yes, it was, so that was the result. Kelly got third. Now, I don't know where Van Hooijdonk finished in the sprint there, but third place for Kelly gives him 10 points, which will give Sean Kelly now 28 points in the overall, and I would say that's enough to give Sean Kelly the overall lead in the Perrier World Cup competition by finishing third in the Wincanton Classic. And that surely is all Sean hoped for today. It's as near as the World Cup competition comes to his home waters, and Sean Kelly should be the new leader tonight. And so there is the face of Frans Masson, one of joy, for at last nobody got to him. The man who keeps plugging away at the finish, and this time it was worth it. And after that finish, here's the result. Frans Masson, the champion of Holland, 5 hours, 59 minutes, 21 seconds, 14 points towards the World Cup. Maurizio Fondrias, champion of the world, just 2 seconds behind. Sean Kelly is third. Etienne de Wilde, the former champion of Belgium, is fourth. And our old friend Teun van Vliet of Holland, he gets fifth and 8 points towards the World Cup. And the big crowd now waiting, and I'm delighted, and I know Paul Sherwin is, for the winner today. He's tried so hard to win races all around the world, including stages in the Tour de France. Now he's landed the big one